A $57 lunch deposit helped give birth to one of Hollywood's greatest comedy classics, the laboratory machines on screen. They were the actual props used in the 1931 Frankenstein film. And Inga, the seemingly innocent assistant, delivered jokes so daring they nearly earned the movie an R rating. But that was only the beginning of an even bigger gamble, choosing to shoot in black and white at a time when Hollywood was obsessed with color. Here are 15 fascinating facts about how Young Frankenstein was made and why that bold decision turned out to be exactly the right one. 15. The $57 lunch that gave birth to Young Frankenstein.
But he kept saying to me, the only thing is I would meet him, I'd have dinner at home, and I'd run over and I'd be there by 7:30 or 8 o'clock.
Have you ever imagined that a cinematic masterpiece could begin with an ordinary lunch conversation? While filming Blazing Saddles, Gene Wilder pitched Mel Brooks a strange idea. What if Frankenstein had a grandson who desperately wanted to escape his family legacy? A scientist determined to avoid the Frankenstein name, only to find himself drawn toward his own destiny. Mel Brooks loved the idea so much that he immediately handed Wilder $57 as a symbolic down payment to secure the concept. That very day on the Blazing Saddles, the two men shook hands and began the journey that would become Young Frankenstein. From a single lunch, a quirky idea, and $57, Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder set in motion one of the most unforgettable comedies in film history. 14. Columbia refused because Brooks wouldn't shoot in color.
We had a deal with Columbia, and we shook hands. We're going to make the movie for $2 million. Oh, by the way, it's going to be in black and white, and I left. Columbia wasn't going for it.
In the 1970s, when color films dominated Hollywood, Mel Brooks still wanted Young Frankenstein to look like a real horror film from the 1930s, black and white, dark, and full of shadow. But Columbia only agreed to make the film on one condition: it had to be shot in color. To Brooks, that would have destroyed the soul of the movie. He did not want to make a modern comedy dressed up as Frankenstein. He wanted audiences to feel as if they were watching a lost film from the golden age of Universal horror. So Brooks refused. Later, 20th Century Fox accepted the risk and agreed to let Young Frankenstein be shot in black and white. The very thing Columbia worried about eventually became the detail that helped Young Frankenstein keep its special vintage charm and live on through time. 13. Putting on the Ritz, the best scene that almost got cut.
From what was once an inarticulate mass of lifeless tissues, may I now present a cultured, sophisticated man about town.
Who would ever think a monster could be forced to sing and dance? In Young Frankenstein, there is one moment that turns the creature into something both clumsy and strangely lovable. He wears a tuxedo, steps onto the stage, and tries to act like a real gentleman. That is the puttin' on the Ritz scene, one of the most iconic moments in the entire film. At first, Mel Brooks strongly opposed it. He thought that putting a strange-looking, newly created monster on stage to sing Puttin' on the Ritz might ruin the tone of the movie and turn the whole thing into a ridiculous joke. But Gene Wilder insisted on keeping it. He believed it was not just a gag, but the moment Frederick proves that his creation deserves to be seen as human. Wilder persuaded Brooks to shoot the scene anyway. If audiences hated it, they could always cut it later. But when Peter Boyle began singing in that crooked, awkward voice, the entire set burst into laughter. What once seemed too strange suddenly became brilliant. By the end of the shoot, even Mel Brooks had to admit he was wrong. The scene the director once feared would destroy the movie ultimately became an immortal moment that brought Young Frankenstein into comedy history. 12. Igor's moving hump.
Well, why isn't it Frederick Frankenstein?
It isn't. It's Frederick Frankenstein.
I see.
You must be Igor.
No, it's pronounced Igor.
If there is one detail that proves Young Frankenstein is mischievous in every single frame, it is Igor's hump. In the film, the hump on Igor's back constantly moves. Sometimes it is on the left, sometimes on the right, between scenes. At first, many viewers thought it was a continuity mistake, but it was actually Marty Feldman deliberately moving the hump around to tease the crew. When everyone discovered it and reported it to Mel Brooks, he did not fix the mistake. Instead, he decided to keep it because it perfectly matched Igor's bizarre sense of humor. There's even a moment when Frederick mentions the hump and Igor calmly replies, "What hump a line?" that turned this mistake into one of the funniest jokes in the entire film. In Igor's world, even a continuity error can become art as long as it is strange enough, deliberate enough, and funny enough. 11. Walk This Way, the joke that almost got removed.
Walk this way. This way.
There are running jokes that seem simple, but echo long after the theater lights go out. In Young Frankenstein, Igor limps along and says, "Walk this way," and Frederick and Inga immediately copy his strange hunched walk. A simple, silly joke, yet strangely charming. But Gene Wilder and Marty Feldman absolutely hated it, seeing it as an old cheap vaudeville stage gag. Mel Brooks was also deeply unsure and almost cut the scene before the test screening. Luckily, the test audience roared with laughter. The scene was kept, and it quickly became one of the film's most iconic lines. Even more interestingly, the phrase "walk this way" later inspired Aerosmith to name their famous song, and the remix with Run DMC elevated it to legendary status in rock music. A joke that was nearly thrown away ended up going far beyond the screen, becoming an unforgettable memory of Young Frankenstein, and a strange milestone in rock histo. 10. Gene Hackman, the Oscar-winning star who did comedy.
Oh, no, don't speak. Don't say a word. Oh, my joy and my prize from heaven. Oh, you must have been the tallest one in your class.
In the chaotic black and white world of Young Frankenstein, there was one surprise that made viewers laugh in the strangest way. Gene Hackman, an Oscar-winning star, appeared in a brief role, not to create drama, but to make the whole theater burst into laughter. He played a blind hermit, a short but extremely memorable cameo. With a kind heart, he tried to help the monster with soup, wine, cigars, and good intentions, but the more he helped, the more everything turned into comic disaster. From pouring hot soup into the monster's lap to lighting his thumb instead of the cigar. It is worth mentioning that Gene Hackman only joined the role because he wanted to try doing something humorous, and his final line, "I was gonna make espresso," became the punchline.
I was gonna make espresso.
That line made the entire crew laugh uncontrollably, to the point that the shot had to be cut quickly to preserve the rhythm. With only a few seconds of screen time, Gene Hackman turned a tiny role into one of the most unexpected and classic comedy cameos in Young Frankenstein history. 9. Inga and the adult jokes, hidden beneath classical comedy.
There's something I've always wanted to ask you about that operation. You know, in the transference part, the monster got part of your wonderful brain. But what did you ever get from him?
Right from her first meeting with Frederick, Inga took him on a rickety hay wagon and naturally asked Roland Z. Hay. At first it sounded like a meaningless joke, but in fact, the sentence hid a very clear adult double meaning. Later, when Frederick blurted out, "What knockers in front of the large door knockers?" Inga continued the rhythm of misunderstanding or wordplay about body parts, making the joke even more perfectly silly. Terry Garr never played it sexy or exaggerated. She kept Inga pure serious and natural. That exact charm made the double entendre jokes smart instead of crude. Even though it was a parody of classic-era horror films, Young Frankenstein still dared to cross the line with adult humor, something that could. 8. Cloris Leachman made Gene Wilder laugh more than 10 times.
I am Frau Blucher.
Steady!
There was one name in Young Frankenstein that only needed to be mentioned for the horse to immediately whinny. But what made that joke funnier was that Cloris Leachman had to repeat the line 15 times, simply because she was acting too seriously. She played Frau Blucher, the grumpy housekeeper with a cold face, a dry voice, and eyes that seemed to be hiding something terrible. Cloris was not trying to be funny at all. She played it completely seriously, as if she were in a real horror film. That exact contrast created the huge laughter, especially the scene where she holds a candle, walks up to Frederick down the stairs, and says,
Stay close to the candles. The staircase can be treacherous.
Her cold and serious delivery made Gene Wilder unable to hold back his laughter, forcing the scene to be shot again many times. The more seriously she acted, the more outrageous the scene became. Sometimes the strongest comedy in Young Frankenstein did not come from a good joke, but from a frighteningly serious face standing in the middle of something absurd. 7. Peter Boyle met his future wife while wearing monster makeup.
What's the matter? Quick, give him the... Quick, give him the... Watch, give him the watch.
There was no romantic kiss or rainy love scene on the set of Hollywood's craziest monster movie. For Peter Boyle, it began when he was at his most terrifying gray-green face bolts attached to his neck hair, standing upright and a stiff, awkward walk like Frankenstein's monster had just escaped from the grave. Lorraine Alterman, then a reporter, came to the set for an interview. Even though he was wearing the strangest monster makeup, Boyle still found the courage to ask her out. And the surprising thing was, she said yes. The two married in 1977. The story became even more special because John Lennon was the best man at their wedding. So even beneath the monster makeup, the heart still knew how to recognize the person meant to stand beside it for life. 6. Laboratory equipment from 1931.
Throw the third switch!
Not the third switch.
Throw it, I say! Throw it!
The eerie blue electric sparks and the giant machines humming inside young Frankenstein's laboratory were not just props created by the crew. They were real equipment from 1931. Mel Brooks was determined to recreate the atmosphere of the classic Frankenstein film, so he tracked down Kenneth Strickfaden, the man who had designed all the machinery for the original Frankenstein film. All of those machines were still intact, stored in his garage after more than 40 years of dust. The miraculous thing was that they still worked well. Brooks immediately rented them all and brought them straight into the film. Every electric spark lever and Tesla coil you see on screen was an authentic object that had once brought the original Frankenstein to life in the black and white classic era. Young Frankenstein did not merely honor the past, it used the very mechanical heart of the past to bring the Frankenstein legend back to life once more. 5. Gene Wilder forbade Mel Brooks from appearing on screen.
Gene Wilder said, "I will not do the movie if you're in it."
Really?
Yeah.
Why? You're
He
so
said-
funny. Why?
He said, "No, because we'll walk past the suit of armor and the vibes will go up and you'll say, ha ha, you folks."
In a film directed and co-written by Mel Brooks himself, there was someone who dared to set one condition. You are not allowed to appear on screen for even 1 second. That person was Gene Wilder. Wilder wanted Young Frankenstein to be seen as a real black and white monster movie, not a comedy where the director suddenly showed up and winked at the audience. He feared that as soon as Brooks revealed his face, the classic atmosphere the whole crew had built would instantly collapse. And Brooks agreed, but of course he did not disappear completely. Brooks still contributed through sound the wolf howl, the pitiful cat meow, and the voice of Victor Frankenstein. Mel Brooks did not step into the frame, but his comic fingerprint still crept through every sound, every laugh, and every dark corner of Young Frankenstein. 4. The monster makeup and the handmade see-through horror effect.
I do not want to live.
Quiet dignity and grace.
Have you ever wondered how Young Frankenstein created the scene where the monster is electrocuted until the audience can see the bones inside his body without using any computer effects? The answer lies entirely in craftsmanship. To create the see-through effect, the crew carved a skull out of transparent resin, placed a light inside it, and then filmed it directly. When the electricity flashed, the light made the audience feel as if they were seeing through Peter Boyle's head. Peter Boyle had to sit for nearly 2 hours every day for makeup. The blue-gray skin was not copied from the 1931 Frankenstein, but added a unique look to the monster, helping his face and eye socket stand out in a classic way. Sometimes, what makes a film memorable is not grand visual effects, but handmade details created with patience and love for the black and white era. 3. Gene Wilder was determined to protect the title.
I changed the endings, but I added comedy to it. I did a satire of those Frankenstein scary movies.
There were real moments when the studio suggested changing the name of the film to wake up a film era that had already fallen asleep. For Gene Wilder Young, Frankenstein was the perfect title, both funny and classic, both strange and respectable to the story of a grandson who could never escape the Frankenstein legacy. He drew inspiration from the film Young Tom Edison. He liked how that title created a story about an heir who inherited a legacy from the person who came before him. So when naming Young Frankenstein, Wilder did not simply want a funny title. He wanted the audience to immediately understand the spirit of the film. This was the story of a later generation, while a name once buried in horror cinema was pulled back into the light one final time. Wilder believed in that title so strongly that he openly said if the studio changed it, he would withdraw from the project. Some film titles are only names, but Young Frankenstein is the soul of the entire film. 2. Young Frankenstein loved Frankenstein.
Loose? He's broken loose? Do you know what that means?
Darling, you mustn't worry so.
What has kept Young Frankenstein alive after 50 years is not because it mocks Frankenstein, but because Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder turned classic horror cinema into a humorous, affectionate, and deeply respectful tribute. They insisted on shooting in black and white, at a time when Hollywood was passionate about color films, long corridors, deep shadows, stone castles, roaring laboratories, and bodies rising from the dead. Everything was recreated with the seriousness and authenticity of the universal horror films of the 1930s. The cast also did not act silly. Gene Wilder, Marty Feldman, Peter Boyle, Cloris Leachman all treated the story like a real film. That seriousness turned every situation into comedy. The monster was not just something to be laughed at, but a being with pain, shame, and the desire to be loved. Young Frankenstein proved that the best parody film is not the film that makes fun of the original work, but the film that makes the audience laugh uncontrollably, while loving the original once again. 1. Alan Ladd Jr. From Young Frankenstein to Star Wars.
But Alan Ladd Jr., Alan Ladd's son, Laddie, just took over Fox. And my producer, Mike Ruskoff, knew him well, got the script to him, and he said it should be in black and white. And I'll give you $100 more to make it.
Amid the turbulent flow of cinema in the early 1970s, a Frankenstein comedy quietly opened the door to one of the greatest cinematic universes of all time, Star Wars. The person standing at the center of this strange connection was Alan Ladd Jr., the head of 20th Century Fox, who approved Young Frankenstein when the project was still seen as an uncertain gamble. But that gamble won big. With a budget of only about $2.78 million US, Young Frankenstein earned more than $86 million US, became a box office phenomenon, and helped Alan Ladd Jr. strengthen his position at Fox. A few years later, when George Lucas brought in a strange project called Star Wars, many people were still hesitant. But Ladd was one of the few who saw its potential and stood up to protect the film. In other words, Young Frankenstein did not create Star Wars, but its success helped put the right person in the right position, so that one of cinema's greatest universes had a chance to be born. From Frankenstein's laboratory to a galaxy far, far away, film history is sometimes connected by one bold decision made at the right time. Young Frankenstein is not just a comedy about Frankenstein, it is a deeply affectionate tribute to black and white monster cinema. From the real machinery of 1931, the handmade makeup effects to the charming jokes that made the monster both frightening and lovable, Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder created a film that both parodied and protected a legend. After all of that, Young Frankenstein is remembered forever because it was not only funny but also had a heart. Which fact impressed you the most? Leave a comment and don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch more movie story videos.